I know, you weren't actually expecting another episode of Get in the Car after I did the 2-part pilot, right? Well, here I am. Coming up, the story of a friend of mine who, as a birthday present to himself, got what he always wanted, what he calls a tailored birthday suit. That story starts next. Welcome to episode 2A of Get in the Car, the podcast featuring conversations confined to the car. I'm Will Stevenson. Thank you so much for listening to both parts of episode 1 as this almost old-fashioned radio broadcaster navigates the new-fashioned world of podcasting. After part 1, where you heard my conversation with my friend Rebecca Yowler, you might have figured out that, at least for the moment, most of my conversations about people recorded in a moving vehicle will feature friends of mine that I feel deserve all the credit and the recognition they deserve as I feature their stories. Becca is queer, a minister, a librarian, and a figure skater, so as you're about to hear, it only makes sense that my next passenger is her partner. Samuel Carrington is another perfect example of someone with a story I feel needs to be told. He acts, works in management for a retail company, has settled in an area of the country he didn't know he'd be in, and is one of the people I think of when I end my podcasts, and before that, my radio programs, with the words, "Be kind to one another." Sam is also transgender. Plus, as is the case with any good friendship, we get to yell at each other for no good reason. But I didn't have to yell at Sam to get in the car. There's room for you too. One note, there were a few audio glitches during the recording of this podcast, but sometimes that can't be helped. After all, I am recording most of this podcast in my car, but I hope the conversation is important enough for you nonetheless. Well, Sam, since the 2 pilot episodes dealt with your partner, I felt that it was only right that you were next up on the list.
Well, I feel like it's appropriate for me to take second chair to that person. She's a pretty phenomenal human.
She is a pretty phenomenal human, and, she has to put up with you, so,
Exactly. I mean, saint, truly.
Exactly. Well, thanks for doing this.
Happy to help.
Well, I do.
And be a guinea pig all at the same time.
What? And you don't look like a guinea pig, which
that's
is...
kind.
That's what I'm here for. I'm here to be reasonably kind. Well, I don't know. Anyway, so for the purposes of this conversation, unlike when I drove Becca to her figure skating practice, those many months ago, or so it seems. Although it was really May, I think, we did that episode. But we have no real set thing in mind, except I just have to have you back at your car before you go to a meeting in about less than 2 hours.
Yeah, rehearsal. I got to go be 5 years old.
Really?
Yes.
You're a 5-year-old. I
am a 5-year-old. I got cast as Charles Wallace in A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to talk more about that a little bit later on, because as I forgot to bring up when I talked with Becca, the way I met both the two of you and a bunch of other people was when I got thrown at the last minute into helping with my first theater production, or first in high school anyway.
Yeah.
So I want to get to that later, but as I said to Becca, as they always say, not to ask in journalism or say in journalism, let's start at the beginning. And I'll ask this kind of the same way I asked Becca. How did someone like you end up in a rustic setting like Galesburg?
Becca, actually, is how I got here.
Yeah.
So I was born and raised in California. I lived in San Francisco and the surrounding area my entire life until I was about 38, I think.
Uh-huh.
And then just before I left the Bay Area, I met Becca at a conference. Mm-hmm. And, she was already on her way here, and I was gearing up to move to Nashville, which was convenient because Nashville's a lot closer to Galesburg than San Francisco is.
True enough.
Actual driving distance. So we were in a long distance relationship for a couple years, and then decided that long distance was really not going to be sustainable, and not sustaining this relationship wasn't an option for either of us.
Of course.
So I quit my job and moved to Galesburg.
You mean to tell me, by the way, that before you met Becca, you didn't own a winter coat?
It's so true. I owned zero winter clothing.
There's some emergency vehicles passing us here for those of you scoring along at home, and I hope it's not because of me. No, it's not.
No, they're going the other direction.
I'm driving responsibly.
They're not on to you yet, Will.
Well, they're not on to me by now. They won't be. Famous last words.
Right?
Like Watergate or something.
I wanted to be fair, but I knew that in the final analysis, the integrity of this office, public faith in the integrity of this office, would have to take priority over all personal consideration.
Anyway, go on.
So the interesting story actually is I took a leave of absence from work. I was having a really hard time with my mental health, so I took a month off of work, and I came to stay with Becca up here in Galesburg during that time. And the second day that I was here was the first rehearsal for Joseph.
Really?
They did Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. It was the second rehearsal, and
you were that new to this area when I met you?
Yeah, and they needed more brothers. And Becca was like, "Come read," and I was like, "Okay, I'll sit in." And I got cast in the show, and I was like, "Well, this will be interesting because the show goes up in 2 months, and in 1 month I have to go back to work, which is in Nashville. So that'll be interesting." And I just didn't go back.
Oh, well, there you go.
It was just like, well, I could go back, or I could stay, and I'm in theater for the first time in 20-something years, and I'm loving it. Becca's here. Ziggy was here. Why would I go anywhere else? So
Ziggy, by the way, since that didn't come up either, is Becca's little furry support friend.
Yes, he's
delightful. He's a very delightful dog.
For those who don't live with him, he is an absolute precious angel of a pug.
For those who don't live with him.
For those who do live with him, he is an absolute perfect pug who is really, really lucky. He's so cute.
Oh no.
Unfortunately, my dog does not recognize his innate cuteness.
Of course.
And they are not friends.
No.
Ziggy really wanted to be friends at first. She decided that was not going to happen, so he peed on her.
Oh, well.
Which actually didn't help her want to be his friend anymore.
Well, I'm not a really good judge of character, but it seems like if somebody pees on you, that's, at least in that situation, that's never going to end well.
Without consent, I really don't think that it's appropriate to, deal with any kind of body fluid exchange.
That is correct, and even if there is consent, it's a little weird. But that's probably a whole different subject line of podcast that, as a broadcaster, I've never imagined I would bring up before. So let's just skip over the fact that I even brought any of that up. But
okay.
Ziggy is adorable, gosh darn it, and I'm sorry that sometimes he's a troublemaker.
Well,
or a trouble receiver, perhaps.
He's just trouble. We like to remind him that we have thumbs and he is portable, and that is how he's survived. Pugs are basically bulldogs, but in really tiny bodies.
That's
so they have all the stubbornness, all the will, all the just rottenness, and mischievousness. But when he starts going nuts, we could just pick him up.
There you go.
We're going to snuggle now, and you don't really have a choice there, friend.
I think a couple of times that I've dealt with Ziggy, of course, as you alluded to, he's been nothing but delightful to me. But I suppose if one, I was entrusted with him for a temporary extended period of time, that one, he might not always be that way, and two, he's not going to get along with my cat.
Actually, cats may have a problem with Ziggy, but Ziggy loves cats. He and our cat are actually best friends.
Well, yeah, you kind of accidentally adopted a cat since you've been here.
Yeah, walking down Main Street, because in Galesburg we have a cute little main street.
That is correct.
We're coming out of a friend's birthday party, walking down the street. Someone was walking down, and there was a cat following them. And they were like, "Do you know this cat?" And the cat was like meowing and like just prancing along behind them. They were like, "This is not our cat. Is this your cat?" And I was like, "No, it's not my cat, but I'm going to pet that cat because she looks real friendly." So I leaned down to pet her, and she jumped into my arms. And I had a cat. And she all of a sudden was my cat.
Of course. Well, that's theoretically the way it works, right?
Yes.
The cat jumps into your arms, it's yours. That's how it works.
Yes. She picked me.
So it's a romance story, except with 4 legs instead of 2, of course.
Yeah.
We will continue on with this discussion in just a moment, but first, the driver needs a beverage. Hello, I am a professional announcer. This would be the perfect opportunity for your product or business to be advertised on this podcast. To find out how you can support Get in the Car, go to our website, getinthecarpodcast.com, or email willstevensonpodcast@gmail.com. Back to you, Will. So the driver just went to get a lovely beverage because he can't drive anywhere without a lovely beverage, Sam. And you know what the problem is? Going to a convenience store and they're out of something. In this case...
That's inconvenient.
It's very inconvenient. In this case, only large beverage cups, yeah, but not extra large. There were extra large lids, no extra large cups. What's the deal with that? Gosh darn it, my beverage is not big enough.
Right, I understand.
But that's because, I like to say I'm a recovering fat kid. So, it's if the size of beverage is not to my liking, I'm just going to be cranky. But I will try not to be cranky because I have to be a charming and delightful, congenial program host.
I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you.
Aw, shucks.
we normally, when Sam and I have a conversation, at one point, purposefully, one of us yells at the other. So, we'll save that for the end.
It'll probably happen.
Fine.
Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
God.
That's what I said.
Jesus, calm down.
Only if you do first.
God, I feel like I was just giving myself a heart attack there.
Brought that on yourself, Will.
But I did bring that on myself. But, that's, it's been a rough 18 months for me, especially the last 12 of those last 18 months.
Yeah.
But enough about me. So, back to what we were talking about how you ended up here and after ending up with Becca and coming to act in or practice being in a play that led to more of a long-term living arrangement, shall we say?
Certainly did.
One of the things that she and I talked about, and I kind of, despite the yelling I just did, I've kind of always believed this, that to a certain extent, everything really does happen for a reason, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You ended up here, you didn't know you were going to end up here, but all things being equal, it's kind of worked out reasonably well, I would say.
I mean, it's pretty wonderful.
Yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I love our home. I love our life together. I love our friends. I love our community. It's so calm here. I've lived in big cities my entire life before I moved to Galesburg.
Yeah.
And that was actually one of the things that I realized was contributing to my mental health challenges. One of the reasons that I was having panic attacks at the drop of a dime was there was just so much chaos and energy around me that I couldn't get a respite.
Yeah.
And it's not like that here. I mean, traffic is, it takes 12 minutes instead of 10 to get all the way across town.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of people, and I don't have to encounter a lot of people, right? Like,
right.
I've always lived in apartment buildings. So,
Some of us still do,
Yeah, but you have to go into the building and get in the elevator and see the people.
Sure.
You have to, see the people when you're going to work. You're, not in your own vehicle, because who drives in a big city? So it was always just, there was always someone around me. And then when I got time alone, I just wanted to shut everything out. It was really not healthy.
I'm glad to hear you say some of what you did about the community and about the move for you, because, and maybe I'm just more aware of it or overly aware of it because of my career in news, but it seems like, at least to me, that I heard people say nothing but bad things about this area for the entirety of the 19 years that I've been here.
Wow.
But yet but I know and I believe that there are people like you and Becca and even myself to an extent that think, hey, this is all right.
Yeah. I mean, it's peaceful. And, I'm 45 minutes away from Panda Express. That's my complaint. That's the worst thing about my setup in life right now.
Well, if I thought we had more time, we could go to a Panda Express and back. But,
right?
But you're right, yeah.
Yeah.
See, and I lived in Springfield for a couple of years, and if there was a Panda Express there, I never went. So, and I went once the short period of time I worked in Peoria, and it was okay. But,
yeah.
But the great thing about Galesburg is that there's almost 2 of everything else.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes 3 or 4.
Yeah. It's like we're the freaking arc of various retail establishments.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's see, there's 2 KFCs, there's 2 Dairy Queens, there's 3 there's 2 now. No, yeah. There's 3 Subways.
2 McDonald's, 2 Taco Bells.
Yeah, 2, only 1 Hardee's. Darn. One
Arby's.
1 Arby's, 1 Wendy's, 2 Pizza Huts. But yeah, everything that you would consider major, there's 2 up here, except for Panda Express.
There's 0 of those here.
But there's fine Chinese dining nonetheless here.
There's actually, I've actually been really impressed at the Asian food in Galesburg.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, coming from San Francisco, I have experienced some pretty authentic Chinese food.
Oh, I'm sure you did.
And Japanese food, and I love pho, I love ramen, I love all of those flavors. And I was nervous about, oh gosh, I'm not going to find that here. But amazing pho is 45 minutes away. Decent pho, right in town. Everything I need is here, and the things that I want are accessible.
Aren't that far away.
Yeah. And, honestly, the peace of mind is so worth whatever inconvenience there is that I don't have access to whatever retail fast food chain I'm dreaming of.
Sure.
It's yeah.
I was going to ask this maybe in a more specific way, or at least in terms of my line of questioning, but now that I'm thinking about it, I'll start out more broad and maybe hone in on something if you need to. Compare life for you in California otherwise versus the life you have now.
Oh my gosh. I think honestly the biggest difference in my life is not... Will just touched my knee.
I accidentally fondled Sam. I'm sorry.
And it's fine. Next time, ask first.
Can I put my own beverage down in its cup holder?
You may. That's fine. Thank you for asking.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
God.
Jeez.
You were saying?
Honestly, the biggest difference is commute.
Yeah.
I work from home here, and so, my commute is downstairs. And I, occasionally we'll wear actual pants, but most of the time I'm wearing pajama pants.
Attaboy.
Because, why not be comfortable?
Yeah.
But, the impact to the quality of my life, not having to be in an office surrounded by other humans. I am an extraordinarily intense introvert. And so, I'm not constantly surrounded by other people. I'm not spending my days in an office. I'm not commuting. It's not taking me 90 minutes for a 5-mile commute home.
I want to hone in on that by saying 2 things. One, I I always thought, and through the course of my career, I've done a lot of work from home, but at least pandemic period, if I didn't have to go to a radio station every day to press a bunch of buttons and make sure things were working, I probably would have gone crazy working from home all the time. But that said, people, I feel a lot of the same way you do in terms of being an introvert, and I would be asked, well, how are you able to be on the air if you're an introvert? And my answer to that is, most of the time when I'm on the air, I'm staring at a wall.
Right.
So, well, how do you?
I think also
how do you handle all of that?
There's a huge misconception, I think, that introverts don't like people.
Oh,
right?
I don't know that that's a misconception. I'm kidding.
I'm
kidding.
Look,
you're right.
The truth is, I hate people, but
yeah,
there are people that I love.
Then
right?
I have a question about that coming up.
Right. Good.
Given the little I know about what you do for a living, but keep going.
Yeah. So I mean, I love people. I care very deeply about people. I connect very deeply with people, and that's why I can't be around them very often.
Yeah.
That's why I actually say I hate people, because I get so easily disappointed and hurt by people.
So do I.
People saying or doing something that is hurtful, whether they intended it to be or not, I feel it more deeply.
Yeah.
And people doing something that feels really good, I feel that more deeply too.
Sure.
Just because I really love people, and so I like intimacy, and so that means even when I'm in a large group of people, I want to have intimate connections.
Yes.
And so, like, it's almost like my brain is attempting to get super connected with 50 people, as opposed to just having a one-on-one connection with someone.
Yeah.
Which is what had me survive working from home in the pandemic, right? Because Becca was working from home too.
Yeah.
And, she's my person, and it's disgusting and ridiculous how in sync we are. We can be alone together and we're connected. We feel connected, but we don't have to be talking.
Sure.
We just play footsie and play on our phones, not talking, right? But we feel connected. We're together. And I don't know that I would have been as healthy getting through the entire pandemic if it wasn't for the fact that Becca was working at home. It was a really hard adjustment when she went back to work.
I'm sure. Wasn't a hard adjustment for my cat. I only live with my cat, but
Yeah. I mean, Ziggy is over the moon. It was actually the hardest on Ziggy.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was pretty hard on Lady too, because Lady likes her alone time, and she got none of it for a year.
No.
She was just there was a human there constantly, and she was like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I'm used to having some alone time. Y'all aren't giving me any space. But poor Ziggy, because dogs can catch COVID, we didn't want him to go out and interact with other dogs.
Oh, of course.
Because we didn't want him to get it. And also, he winds himself around the humans and the dogs, so we'd have to get close to untangle him.
Right.
So, all of that just felt unsafe. So he spent an entire year only having pets from us.
Yeah.
And if he would hear someone walking outside, he would start crying. Not barking, crying. It was the most pathetic thing I have ever experienced.
Oh.
That little dog just desperately wanted some other human attention. He is an extrovert.
Yeah.
He wants all the people. He needs all the people. He's the mayor at Becca's work. Her boss recognizes his mayordom and actually refers to him as the mayor.
Of course, yeah.
So he has, he has his following and his fans. He has his, he sits on his throne on Becca's desk. He has a little bed there. He just sits there and waits for people to come adore him.
Of course.
He has the best life when she's working at the office.
No kidding.
So the pandemic was really, really, really hard on him. But, Becca and I, we were hearing stories about, all of these couples who are fighting and having a really hard time getting through the pandemic together because they were all of a sudden having to spend so much time together. And we were
Right.
we kind of don't want it to end.
Yeah.
Like, we'd like to go visit our families.
Yeah.
But we kind of like hope that it doesn't really end, because this has been really nice.
As there's been sort of a return to some form of normal, even though it's not going to be normal for very long, I fear.
Yeah.
But especially after my mom passed away in December from COVID, and, you know, she took all the precautions. She made sure she, you know, told her kids under no uncertain terms that they had to take care of themselves and things like that. But, you know, this whole thing is in many ways so exhausting that I think a lot of us are at that point, but there's still that part of my brain that says I still have to be responsible and take care of myself and protect myself and those around me as much as I can.
Yeah.
But yet even this introvert wants to go out and see people every now and then now.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we were very, very fortunate that we had kind of a quarantine pod. And so, you know, there's a family that we're really close to here in town, and, you know, we spent time together.
Sure.
You know, we eased into it last summer with backyard barbecues. And then, you know, like, we were all taking the same precautions.
Yeah.
And just kind of miffed at everybody who wasn't. And so, you know, we felt very comfortable being like, okay, we can be in enclosed spaces together. But then when the kids went back to school, and when she went back to school, it was just like, you know what? Like, love you. We'll see you outside. But so we did get a little bit of that, like, outside of our immediate family. We got to have a little bit of that extended family bit throughout the course of the months, just being able to be together.
You talked, kind of get moving away from that, you talked a little bit about some of the mental health struggles you said you've had over the course of your life. For lack of a better way of asking the question, how real have some of those struggles been for you?
Yeah. Well, you know, my mom has struggled with anxiety and depression her whole life. Mostly depression, a little bit of anxiety. And so, you know, I come by it righteously. But, you know, so I witnessed her experiencing that as a kid. And I didn't know what it was. Now I obviously have the language for it. And, you know, I had depression. You know, there was an entire semester in college where I didn't leave my dorm room except to go eat.
Wow.
And I just slept. I slept for an entire semester. And, you know, I had to withdraw from all my classes, and that was all just kind of because there was a lot that I experienced as a teenager. I divorced my parents, moved in with my grandparents, came out as queer, went to college, lived by myself, broke up with my first girlfriend. Like, all of that happened within like a 4-year period. I was sexually assaulted by a social worker during the process of divorcing my parents. So that whole, I didn't have therapy. I wasn't processing it. I was just kind of holding on to all of it. It was cumulative, and it just like layered in. So, you know, the first time I really realized, like, ooh, I've got some mental health things going on, was that semester in college, when I was 18, and just didn't get out of bed for about 8 weeks. You know, I struggled off and on with depression throughout most of my adult life. It didn't actually get really bad until I was in a job, and I was told to think like a man. shortly after I started transitioning. I was told to think more like a man. And that's why my career wasn't going to go anywhere. And
who in the world, for lack of a better term, it's not very often I'm at a loss for words, but what the hell?
Yeah. And, this person has their own struggles and their own challenges. And I don't think that she realized what it was that she was saying when she said it. Mm-hmm. But later that night, I had my first panic attack, and I ended up in the hospital because I thought I was having a heart attack. And so that was my first panic attack and real recognition of, there's anxiety too. And recognizing that, for me, depression and anxiety just kind of play ping pong with my brain chemistry. So it's just like my brain goes, we're depressed. We're going to overcompensate. We're going to amp up all that adrenaline. So all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, completely anxious about everything, which is exhausting. So I get depressed.
Yeah. I wish there was a way that something in me or in whoever's dealing with it I wish there was a way that I would know that this was going to happen before some big explosion, Right?
Like, could I get a little warning, please?
Yeah.
And then, a few years after that, I got married, and the woman that I was married to was emotionally abusive.
Oh, goodness.
Which, super not helpful for someone with depression and anxiety.
Nope, not even a little. Yeah.
And I drove every day when I drove to work, I drove by this area of the freeway where someone had clearly driven off the road and the guardrail was bent and broken.
Yeah.
And it was like a real steep cliff. And every day I drove by there, I was like, you know what? I could just not have to deal with this anymore. I'm grateful to be out of the house, and I could actually never have to go home again. And I started coming up with a plan.
Yeah.
Thank God I never did anything about it. But, I started getting some help and got real active with therapy.
Yeah.
After that point, eventually I left that relationship. Also, thankfully. And it was, a few years after I left that relationship that I was living in Nashville. And there was a series of things that happened all at once. My apartment got broken into in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like a break-in. It was some drunk dude who somehow had a key to my apartment because it turns out that the apartment building actually just changed the doorknobs when someone moved out, and they swapped them. So dude had a key to my apartment because he used to live in the apartment 2 floors above in the exact same location.
Oh, God.
So he just got off on the wrong spot in the elevator. Somebody let him into the building. He was drunk out of his mind. He just forgot where he lived. And I woke up to some dude in his boxer shorts sleeping on my couch.
Oh, jeez.
So I wake up, get ready to go to work, and I end up having a fist fight with some dude who's telling me that I should get out of his apartment while he's in my apartment.
Oh.
And the next morning, when it was time to get out of bed, I stood in front of my bedroom door for about 20 minutes. Just like, I can't open the door because what if someone else is out there?
Right.
And I started barricading the front door to my apartment, and it got pretty intense. And then I started not trusting people. I was super not trusting people. And things got really stressful at work, and I was basically living at a very low level panic attack at all times. And I don't know how much experience you have interacting with someone who's having a panic attack, but they're not able, I was not able to have compassion or empathy or really actively listen to anybody who was talking to me.
You just shut everything off.
I mean, I was just you're out to get me. Everybody was out to get me.
Pardon me.
I was just completely like in panic mode all the time. And so that was actually why I took a leave of absence from work. That was also not aided by the fact that there was a group of people at the company that I worked for who were one by one filing claims against all of the queer people in management.
Jesus.
Yeah, so I wasn't the last one. I was about the third that happened to.
And they otherwise had no reason to complain about you for anything.
No.
Other than you being queer.
Well, me being queer and me having, like, living at a low level of panic and really just not being pleasant to be around.
Yeah, so there was maybe a little bit of a reason, but not much of a, not a real reason.
You know, like, when it all started, no, there was nothing to complain about. But, you know, once I was told, like, hey, there's been a complaint filed, like, there's an issue here, that combined with the apartment being broken into, like, I was just a wreck. I didn't trust anybody. I couldn't breathe. If there were more than 2 people in a meeting, I couldn't function. Yeah. I just completely, like, shut down, and if I was asked a question, I lashed out. It was so not good.
Well, meetings by themselves at work can be awfully conducive to that.
You know? Super unpleasant. There is that.
I've never been to a staff meeting or to a department head meeting in the course of my career that I ever really had a good time at.
You know, I have been very fortunate in my career that I have kept ending up at companies that are full of heart. Yeah. And with teams who are, you know, people first. Yeah. And that's been incredibly fortunate for me. I mean, I know that I have a very, very unique experience. Yeah. Compared to most people.
Yeah, compared to, at least even compared to me, who of course has spent most of his life in the dishonest media.
Well, you know. That's what you get for picking such a, you know, terrible profession.
Well, you know, being a game show host really just wasn't in the cards.
I don't understand why. I feel like if you told me I wanted $1 million, it would make me happier than if a lot of the actual game show hosts out there told me that.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because here's the thing. I would love, for example, even though supposedly now that things in California COVID-wise are going backwards again, that there may or may not be a studio audience for the 50th season of The Price is Right. But
that's kind of exciting.
I've always thought that it would be cool as hell to be in that studio audience, but I don't have any designs about being ever picked that, quote, come on down. I just don't think I'm that type of person, but I would like to be around that just once.
Yeah, I would totally want to be, like, on the show and expect to win.
Yeah, see, I just want to be there and watch it. I don't think that they would ever pick me. I don't think so at all. And all I would ever love to win is just, $10,000 in cash.
A new car!
Right?
So, but I don't think that'll ever happen. But, I can clap and cheer for people, no problem.
Right? Yeah.
I just don't react to things in the excited way that they look for when they're trying to pick contestants for The Price is Right or Let's Make a Deal. Maybe if I were smarter, I could be on Jeopardy, but I don't see that happening either.
I mean, Wheel of Fortune.
I'm glad you said Wheel of Fortune, because I went to the same college as Pat Sajak, and I have to tell people that every time they bring up Wheel of Fortune.
They serve great margaritas, so Van and I would go across and have 2 or 3 or 6, and then come and do the last shows and have trouble recognizing the alphabet. They're really good tapes to get hold of.
Well, I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, but Wheel of Fortune might be okay, but when I play it at home on a video game, I'm not very good. I'm not as good as I think I am. Despite the fact that words have really been a good portion of my career.
Right? Yeah. Also not very good at Wheel of Fortune.
No. Jeopardy, I can control that environment when I'm playing on a video game. If I were in that studio, I would probably be the person bitching about the signaling button not working. But that was, I think, the whole bit when the late Regis Philbin was on Celebrity Jeopardy. It was that for the longest time he didn't buzz in on anything, and they thought it wasn't working.
Before you get to select again, I would like to ask a favor of Regis.
Can I ask a favor of you, Alex? Is this thing working? Thank you for checking.
It works. You don't.
Yeah.
But I digress. Confession time. Will wants to go see a game show before he dies. But
I feel like that's a pretty good life goal.
I think that is a good life goal.
It's a good bucket list item.
It is. I don't know that it'll ever happen because I can think of 1,000 reasons why I would never travel to any particular location, but someday it'll happen. I'll just have to get myself around people that want to go with me. Hint, nudge. Hint, nudge.
I mean, I spend some time in LA now for my job.
Yeah. So. See, I know somebody who lives out that way and whose husband apparently used to work security or something or other at CBS Television City.
So you've got an in.
I would like to think I have.
What you're telling me is that this is an actual real possibility.
Well, maybe more than I want to think it is in my head. And then, I have a nervous breakdown and I pass out in line to get into the show and I never see it.
We can bring some oxygen.
That would be great.
And, we'll pull a weekend at Bernie's in the event that you actually pass out. And we'll take lots of photos so you can have evidence that you were there even if you don't remember it.
A weekend at Bernie's moment in my life might also be on my bucket list. That's not true.
2 bucket list items in one go.
Uh-huh. There you have it. All right. So, anyway, but again, kind of maybe coming a little bit full circle in terms of your life here, and some of this really awful stuff happened while you were in Nashville.
Yeah.
But then at some point, then comes Becca, and then you come to Galesburg and act in a play, and the rest, as they say, is history.
It's true. It's true. Wonderful history.
With that, we'll put the brakes on this edition of Get in the Car. Next time, in part 2 of my conversation with Samuel Carrington, the full story of how he got his tailored birthday suit. You'll want to hear it. It's a great story and signifies how life has gotten better for Samuel Carrington. Get in the Car is hosted and produced by me, Will Stevenson. Production music, Hide and Seek, Cruise Control, and Feather Duster all are from Shane Ivers at silvermansound.com. Copyright 2021 by Will Stevenson. Thanks so much for listening. Please drive safely and join me again for Get in the Car. Be kind to one another.